right, so we are just jumping right into this one. I am making these two little freestanding furniture pieces. I'm calling them media consoles. This guy is going to be housing audio equipment and some other media entertainment stuff in there. So yeah, media console. Sounds like a good name. Starting out with the doors and end panels. I have 4 doors and 4 end panels to make. So starting out, milling up material for those. It's a pretty exciting project for me because it's a little inset job, which I don't get a lot of inset work out here. Mostly what we do is Euro style, which if you guys have been following along, you know that. So I'd much rather be doing inset work, but you got to do what people want. So I ripped everything to rough width and then breaking them down to rough length. And then everything gets labeled. This is pretty easy because I only have 2 different size things. I have 4 of the same size doors and 4 of the same size end panels. Everything gets flattened and the edge gets jointed. If you notice there, I was marking the face and the edge that I hit on the jointer with my pencil. I just put a little squiggly line there. That way, when I go to the planer or the table saw, I know which side is good, which side I ran through the joiner. And everything gets run through the planer to thickness and to rough width. Everything is still oversized. You guys know I glue up all my doors oversized. We'll get into that a little bit later. So then we cut the rails down. All my stiles remain long. Just get all the rails cut, and then we can move on to the shaper. Just running my rails through the shaper. Cope first, always cope first. Then we run the profile, get the groove in there. Lots of rails. Not really. Not a lot compared to other jobs where we do a whole kitchen and we have hundreds of them. You can see I've got the stacks of that fur job too. Of doors that I need to continue gluing up. Actually, that was from most of them are glued up now at this point. Then we move on to the panels. 1/2-inch MDF for my panels. My doors actually for this job are going to end up being about 13/16 just because I'm matching existing cabinetry that I built for this client before. So I didn't want to throw 1-inch doors and then have kind of mismatched stuff in the house. So I'm doing 3/4 doors, but we still get a 1/2-inch panel. It just adds a little weight to the door. Panel ends up being flush in the back, just gives it a nice look, and then the door has some weight to it. Like I said, just feels a lot better than just a 1/4-inch panel. Here on my router table, I've got just a straight cutter in there, and we're just rabbiting the edge so it fits into that 1/4-inch groove in the door. And it's really nice with that power feeder on there, that little delta that I have. And so then here I'm just breaking that inside edge on the door parts so that I have a little bit of a round over there so the paint doesn't build up when I go to paint these doors. I don't want the paint to bridge in that corner because down the road it has the potential of cracking. Here we go, gluing up. Stiles are long. Get some glue on my tenons. Use a little brush, talking to myself or singing maybe. So I'll get my rails in. Then I get one end clamped, and then I throw my spacers in the middle, tap it down, tap the rail down, just so those are nice and snug, and then clamp it up. And that's it. That sucker is glued. Notice in the background I got my Cowboys flag hung up. I don't have high hopes this year. I don't, unfortunately. So here, dude, get off your phone, man. You've got mid glue up there. Little tip there, sometimes when you go to tap that rail down without a clamp on it, it just kind of bounces. So you put the clamp on, put a little pressure, and then when you tap it down, it'll stay nice and tight. Getting everything out of clamps. Then we'll run everything through the sander, which is really nice. I know I've talked about this before, but love that machine. I think it's great. I specifically bought it for this purpose. And obviously I use it for lots of other things too, but alright, so I'm only cutting my finished ends here because I need them to attach to my face frames, and I don't want to cut my doors yet until my face frame is put together so I can get them fitting perfect. So I'm holding off on the doors, only cutting the finished ends. So I square up one end, and then I square up style, and then I cut it to its finished height here. I know somebody's gonna say something about that blade being so high. And then I do the final rip over on my regular table saw, and doing that, I don't use the fence that came with the slider. I just don't like it. So I do the final rip here, and I like doing that rip. You do that rip last, and that way any tear out that you may have gotten from the crosscut comes off on that final rip, if that makes any sense. So here I'm just kind of digging through my messy miter saw station and finding some pieces for face frame material. I just have two simple face frames to put together. Back at the joiner, milling stuff up. I have really been enjoying that joiner with the helical head. It is it's really, really nice. So my face frame parts get sanded at the sander, front, back, and both edges. Bring them down to final thickness and width, and then all my parts obviously get cut to length. Again with that blade height, man. So here I'm mitering my styles on my face frames because they are going to be mitered to my end panels, which you'll see in a second. And I'm doing this before I put the face frame together. Just makes it easier. It is possible to do it after. It's a little tricky. You have to set up with your table saw fence to do it after your face frame is put together. Maybe I could show you that method one of these days, but there you go. See, I got the end panels mitered as well. Then I'll pocket hole my face frame parts so I can put those together. Still just using that Craig Foreman. I've had that one for 6 years, and it has been solid. Can't complain about it. and then just pocket screwing this thing together. And so obviously everything on this project, there's two identical cabinets, except for the interiors, which are a little different. But so here we go. I got the face frame, got my mitered end panels, and I'm just taping. You can see I put a couple pieces of tape going across the joint and then one long piece going down. And this method really works good. I like using this green tape because it's really strong. A lot of guys use the clear packing tape. You can use whatever you prefer. I like the green tape, and so that's what I use. And then just flip everything over. Get some glue on it. And I've got just some scrap pieces of plywood with some pocket holes in it. You can see I cut a 45 out of the corner there just so I can like clean the joint, my miter joint, the glue. And yeah, just pocket screw this thing on the back, and this will just hold it nice and square while the glue dries, because you don't want that thing to be glued up way out of square. Repeat for the other side. And then we will just keep moving on. So now that I have my face frames together, I can move on to cutting my doors down. All right, so then I'm just checking the height there, making sure I'm good. I give myself, I'm going for 1/8 inch gaps on this before paint, because I've noticed with the water base, it does build up thicker than the lacquer. So I typically would do 3/32, you know, with raw material, but now I'm going 1/8. Dummy. So I'm going 1/8 inch gaps, and then the paint buildup, I'll end up with about a 3/32 gap in the end. And then continuing doing the same method for cutting my doors down as I did my end panels, just getting that final rip there. And now we can put all these things in, just double check again, make sure our gaps are all good. I got some 1/8 inch spacers down there that the doors are sitting on. I put a piece of tape there up at the top just to hold it from tipping out. Everything is looking nice, reveals are looking good, everything's nice and square. I am very happy so far with how this is all looking. Inset work is just satisfying. It just is. Now we're moving on to a little detail that's going on the bottom of my face frame. And if you notice, all the dust just filling the room there, and I had no idea what was going on. Obviously, there was a giant hole in one of my dust collector bags, and I mean, you could see the room literally just filling up with dust. And I'm just working away, breathing it all in. Yep, whatever. No idea. And then I think after these pieces, after I ripped them, I kind of looked around and realized it and changed the bag. So these pieces that I'm milling up are going on the bottom of the face frame, and they're gonna stick out. Honestly, I don't even know what you would call this piece. It's not really an apron, I don't think. If anybody knows, leave it in the comments down below. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. It's just gonna go on the bottom of the face frame and stick out about 3/4 and just adds a nice little detail on the bottom of this thing. So it's gonna get mitered all around. So the face frame is upside down right now. And this piece is just gonna go sit on this just like that. I glued it, tacked it with some nails, and then just screwed it on. And just continue it around the whole bottom of the frame. Start removing that tape. And one thing that I totally messed up here, I should have sanded the frame and the end panel before I put that piece on the bottom, because obviously I can't really be banging into that piece now, trying to sand my face frame and damaging it with the DA. So sanding that around the bottom edge was a little bit tricky, but we got it done. And then here I've got a bunch of alder, and we're gonna start gluing up these pieces to make some furniture style feet for these. So I just grabbed a bunch of scraps that I had, and I didn't have a roller. I'm out of glue rollers, and yeah, I did it like this. Not the best, most efficient way, but it worked, and I got the glue spread out. They're flush. These pieces are like different widths too, but they're flush on my side. I'm flushing them up, and I'm just tacking them with a brad nailer here so they don't slide around when I go to clamp it. Just right on the ends. And then we just clamp the heck out of this thing, and we will come back to it later and we will get this milled up. Lots of clamps, lots of glue squeeze out. While that's drying up, I get the edge bander going so that thing can heat up, and we start breaking down the plywood for the cabinet boxes. We're gonna get through this quick because cutting plywood's kind of boring, and you guys have seen me do it quite a bit. So when we get over to the edge bander, we're only edge banding because this is an inset job, and I keep my face frames will be flush with my plywood with the inside edge, so I don't need to edge band everything. I'm only edge banding a few pieces that are going to be my center partitions and my bottom, because my bottom is actually going to stick up 1/4 of an inch from my face frame, and it's going to be my door stop. And so my doors are actually a 1/16 inch thinner than my face frame material, so that I can account for a rubber bumper in between the door and the plywood box, and then they'll be flush in the front. So if you notice those arrows there, that's just how I label my parts for my partitions before I take them and drill holes in them. That way I can just look at the back, know that what edge is up and what edge is obviously facing in. The arrow facing in is probably not necessary. You probably can tell that that's the side facing in by the holes, but yeah, I've just always put that arrow facing in. Really? I hate when that happens. That was a Milwaukee one. Usually I use the DeWalt countersinks, and I've never had one. That one actually snapped just from like the torque of the drill, which is kind of weird. The DeWalt ones have never done that. So maybe Milwaukee, step up your countersink game. So box assembly, you see I was using the spacers there. Same thing here. We'll get the outside pieces screwed on. Then I use the spacer clamped on. You can see it clamped on there for the inside pieces. I held my center partitions a 1/2 inch back from the front. Get this thing all screwed together. Then putting some standoffs down, and you will see why here in a second. I just cut the backs for this, and then one of them I cut down, so they're both gonna be like this. I cut out a big square in the middle. I did not film how I cut this just because it's probably not the safest thing to do. I basically held it down on the table and raised the blade up and did that all around. But I still have to cut the other one, so I'm just gonna clamp them together. Nice 1/4 inch compression bit. And that'll make routing this really easy. But the reason for this is these cabinets are going to house some like record players and some other electronic devices. So client wants them to be able to breathe out through the back. He said, let's not put any back on it. And I suggested this because the back is gonna give the cabinet obviously strength and rigidity. So this is what we're doing. We did think about doing like some grills and stuff, but ultimately he wanted kind of as big of an opening as he could get, just so it gets a lot of airflow. So this is what we did. So we'll cut the other one and then we'll just continue. All right, so you can literally see I'm just clamping this thing together. I drill a hole and then I can just route this center piece out. And boom, then I've got my other back. So we'll get these attached before we get the face frames on. And what I didn't get on video, you can see I added some blocking to the bottom. Those are just for the furniture feet to attach to. So here we go, face frames are going on. Mark everything for some biscuits. Just using regular biscuits here. I still didn't have my Lamello Zeta P2 back, but I just got it back the other day. So otherwise I could do this with the Lamello Zeta P2 even after I painted the face frames. So we'll shoot all the biscuits, and I am going to be attaching them, and then I'll paint everything, so everything will get masked off. And I didn't shoot any in the bottom rail. I am just, because that's an edge banded piece, and it's, remember the bottom sticks up a 1/4 inch, so I just put some roux glue in there and clamped it. The rest of this with all the biscuits will be plenty strong. So those are my sides. So I break that edge a little bit where my face frame is gonna sit, because it does sit flush, and it just rounds the edge over a little bit, gives it a nice little reveal. So here's a tip when you're doing your face frames, attaching them to the boxes like this, put the biscuits in the face frame, because if you put the biscuits in the box and then you put glue in the face frame biscuit slots, when you go to tip it over or when it's standing there like that, all the glue is going to run out of them. So put your biscuits, put the glue and then the biscuit in the face frame first. So I'm literally just, I glued everything and then we're just clamping it up. And if you noticed, when I applied the glue, I applied it to the outside edge of the plywood because I want to keep glue squeeze out inside the box to a minimum, not putting a ton of glue here. Back to this mess. So get this thing out of the clamps, and then the first thing I do before I mill anything is go cut the ends off where I put those nails, so that I don't run this through the machine or through my machines and ruin the blades. So we get rid of the nails, and then to the joiner. And then this thing was quite a bit oversized, so we'll plane it down to a thickness of about 4 1/8. And then we'll take it to the table saw, rip it down to about 4 1/8. And then we took it over to the sander. So this thing is long enough to give me all the feet that I need. I needed to square up the end, obviously. And then I just clamped down a little piece there and ran it through and got all my feet cut out this way. I'm not really worried about that little bit of tear out that I'm getting, because all these feet are getting tapered. Now, I thought about this, how I wanted to do it. And obviously this is what I decided on, and it worked really, really good. The other way would have been on the bandsaw, and problem with the bandsaw for me is I don't have like an edge sander or anything, so cleaning up those bandsaw marks, sanding them would have been a real pain in the butt. We'll just say that. So you see what I'm doing here. I've got a block, and then that's my stop block, and then I'm clamping my foot to it. And as I cut it, I have to put that tapered wedge in there. And on my last cut, I have to put it behind it and in front of it. And that just gives me a square block to clamp to. And you can see there, nice tapered feet on all 4 sides. These came out really cool. And then got them cleaned up real quick with the orbital. Now to the countertops. So I got a sheet of 3/4 alder ply. Get this thing broken down. Then we're gonna cut to length, and then I'm ripping up some alder here for the nosing. We'll run it through the sander. Get those edges and the face cleaned up. And I brought my countertop over, so obviously I have 2 of them that are the same size, and get everything mitered at the miter saw station. And then we'll go back over to the bench, start marking for biscuits. So nosing is going on 3 sides of these. Say hi to Tony Soprano. We'll go ahead, cut all our biscuit slots. And then everything gets routed. The 3 edges get routed with this plywood prep bit from Collins Tool. So this thing, what it does, it just cuts a little scoop out of that front edge of the plywood. It doesn't touch the top or bottom edge, just the middle. I try to show you here, but it's really hard to see it on camera, the little gap in between there. It basically gives a little space for the glue to go and gives you a really, really tight joint up against that plywood veneer. When I got it, I saw some other guys using it, and I wasn't really like sure about it, and then I used it, and it really does make a difference. So that extra step, in my opinion, if you're doing countertops or nosings like this, it's totally worth it. So then after they come out of clamps, just adding some filler pieces on the bottom to bring everything up to 1.25 inches. Sand it all, break those edges. So here's my cabinet doors. Just pin the panel in and then fill any little cracks and pinholes from the pin nails with that red 3M filler. Sanding the edges of the doors with the DA. If you're uncomfortable with the sander, I would not recommend doing it. I used to always do it with a block and by hand and a piece of sandpaper, and then now I don't. I do it obviously with the sander, but I'm comfortable with it. But you can screw up a door very quickly edge sanding it with a DA like that. So just be careful. So right there, if you saw with my combination square, I marked 1.5 inches back from the back of the face frame because that's where my hinge plates get screwed in. Just checking the doors, and then we're into the paint room. That my spray booth still is not hooked up. We'll talk about that soon. Very light coats here. Very light coats is the key to not getting those fibers and that MDF to raise like crazy. So multiple light coats of primer and then masking off. I hate masking cabinets off. It is like one of my least favorite things to do. So same thing, very light coats. Light coats. I'm using an airless sprayer, so there's tons of overspray. But I promise you, I'm doing a very light coat. Sanding everything by hand after with 320 because, like I said, light coat. So if I use the DA on this, I'm gonna blast right through that primer. I do it by hand. And I'll tell you, this water-based finishes Gemini has been coming out amazing. I am so happy. I wish I switched to this stuff sooner. So then here we go, applying stain to the feet. So the cabinet's paint, and then the top and the feet are stain grade. And I'm using a gel stain. I really like the gel stain, especially on alder, because it doesn't, some stains on the alder, it's like pine almost, and it'll get really splotchy and stuff like that. But these gel stains, man, the coverage is very good and even, and I like it. And I break all the rules, guys, and I apply Rubio over the top of this, and then I apply wax over the top of the Rubio, breaking all the rules. So here we go, final coat on the doors. Using a 20 sheen. This was a Sherwin-Williams color, and I honestly don't remember what it was. Doing my final sanding on the cabinets, and then hit those with their final coat of paint. And you can see that little trim detail on the bottom just sticks out, just looks nice. And this is always the satisfying part, is peeling away that stuff. All right, so here's these blocks. So these blocks are 1.5 inches thick, and they are for my drawers to attach to, my drawer slides to attach to. Because my hinge is there, I need to push my drawer slide out so that the drawer will clear the door. It doesn't need to be 1.5 inches thick. I like to make them 1.5 inches thick because I want to give myself a little extra clearance so that my drawer is not banging into the back of the door. And funny story, I actually had the drawers made for this twice, because the first dimension that I gave my drawer supplier, I gave her the dimension without minusing the 1.5 inches. And then the next morning, before I went to go pick them up, I realized I gave her the wrong size. I literally woke up and that was the first thing that came to my mind. That's usually how it happens when you realize you made a mistake. So, feet are attached. Countertops are getting attached. Things are coming together and we are almost done. Pre-drilling and screwing the countertops in. Doors getting hung. Getting those reveals dialed. Adjustable shelves, so you can see the two different cabinets. These ones have drawers, and then it has that little middle area. The other one is all adjustable shelves. These were all client requests and design. So that's what they wanted, that's what they got. These things came out really nice. Reveals, everything looked good. Fun to crank out an inset job. Fun little project. Hope you guys learned something. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please let me know in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we will see you on the next one.